Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today is our good friend David Morgan from the Morgan Report. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always look forward to it, Elijah. Thank you.
Well, it's great to have you today. I did want to discuss the rally we're seeing in silver. Went above $30 briefly here today, but now below again. Do you think silver can sustain this $30 level, or do we have more consolidation to go from here?
Let's start off the hard question first. Well, I don't know is the answer. I think we probably have a little bit more work to do. And from my perspective, what's that mean? Maybe a month or two. I do believe we'll finish out the end of the year, the last quarter above 30, probably the whole time or close to it. We could get a down move for a few days or some bad news or whatever, but no, I think we're going to finally get over that 30 and make it support rather than resistance. As you know, we've been there already. We've been as high as 32.50. And so it's not a big stretch to think that silver can do it again and sustain it.
Definitely. So when it goes, as we go from here, obviously gold is making headlines now with all-time highs. Do you anticipate gold continuing to rise from here?
Yeah, we're in the third leg of a major secular bull market. The pause phase was extremely painful and a lot longer duration than I ever expected it to be. But nonetheless, we have started the third leg up. The run to gold has begun, as I've said on your, you know, podcast and many others that, starts off rather stealthily where, just the central banks are buying more gold than they have in times past, which is taking place. And then more and more institutional types will come in, and then pension funds and hedge funds, and then individuals and wealth managers will be pushing them clients into gold, and on and on it goes until we get a lot of momentum. We're not there yet, but the process has begun. So where do we end the end of the year in gold? Again, I don't know for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me to see something in the 2650, maybe 2700. Will it get to 3000 by end of the year? It could. I think for that to happen, we've got to see something big, like some problem with the US election or election maybe in another country, some unfortunately maybe escalation in the war, some asymmetric something that happens in the war. And I'm talking the Middle East and Ukraine and Taiwan, who knows. So you know but to get $500 more in this year on gold is a bit of a stretch in my view, but certainly can happen. But the point is that we don't really have to fear trading from the long side for both the metals, which doesn't mean you can be blasé about it. If you buy and hold, you can be pretty calm about it. But if you're trading, you want to pick your entry points very carefully and keep stops tight and realize that even in a big bull market, even in the last phase, which is usually the most rewarding, that there will be some significant pullbacks and some times where you doubt that the market's going higher, that maybe it's peaked, and climbing that wall of worry. So that's where we are.
And it seems like obviously when you look at the bank's positions, they're typically on the right side of things. If we consider the latest COT reports, are the banks currently more long or short at the moment?
Yeah, we're at the point in the COT right now where that's pretty ugly, meaning that the professionals, are ready to get taken by the banks. I think the problem with the COT is it's very accurate as far as the trend shift is going to take place. It's inaccurate as far as duration. As soon as you get into this zone, is it going to be a week, a month, 2 months, sometimes 3 months before it actually flips that direction? Well, we're in a caution area right now. If you're trading right now, I would take profits, over the next, short duration, maybe be early, but no, it doesn't look good structurally for gold right now. Again, well, David, last week you said it looked good in gold's, $100 higher. Are you out of your mind? No, I'm not. But these are zones. So we're in what would be called the selling zone on a trading basis. Again, how long it will take, we don't know.
Now we have a few viewers' questions here. Jack is wanting to know if you have a prediction of where silver will close before the election, and then this Nate is wanting to know if you think the outcome of the election would impact silver either way.
Yeah, interesting question. First of all, before the election, I'll say it's over 30. After the election, depending who gets in, I'd say if the Democrat gets in, it'll be $2 to $3 higher. If Republicans get in, it may steady be more a lower move, like stay around the 30 level, kind of hug that level. There is a bit of a correspondence between who's elected. Once the illness happened, we saw that big sell off in silver. We got about 120, 125 to 1 the gold silver ratio. I was lucky enough to buy within a couple of days of the bottom. And then it shot back up. And then after the Trump left and Democrats got in, a lot of people, well, after Trump got in, basically, a lot of people just sort of gave up buying their precious metals. It's like, well, someone's in the White House that's going to fix everything for us. And that's my strong belief that's incorrect. You really have to, feed your family first. You can't depend on any political figure to solve, problems uh, that are personal. I mean, your personal finances are your personal finances. So now the correlation is being Democrats usually pushes it higher, faster.
But it seems like long term, what you're saying, there's not much
In the
impact. Is
long
that,
run, it doesn't make any difference. In the short term, it can.
which makes sense because I mean, if you look at the monetary issues, they're the same between Democrat and Republican. You're seeing the national debt skyrocket under both kinds of administrations.
Yeah, the market comes to kind of a reality. It kind of gets hopeful, like you might think, oh, our guy's in, our team's winning. Oh, good, I can relax or cheer or whatever. And then that kind of wears off. It's sort of a knee-jerk reaction. And then, as you just said, reality sets in, and it's like, well, it doesn't matter who's in office. The deficit continues to explode. We can't pay it back. Now, are we going to default by printing too much currency and no one accepts the currency? Or are we going to flat out say we can't pay it back and leave those people holding the debt take a loss?
Now, when it comes to one of the other precious metals, platinum, we're seeing, not much of a rise. The gold and silver have rallied quite a bit in the last couple months, with gold making new all-time highs, silver making, multi-year highs, but platinum's still under 1,000 right now. It's trading around 960 right now. But you recently put out a video saying that there are really bullish fundamentals for platinum demand going forward. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, one is that the cost of mining platinum is greater than the spot price in a lot of cases. Item number two is it's 15 times rarer than gold. Item number three is 70% comes from South Africa, and they've really got problems down there, not only politically, but also with electricity, power. And of course, mining is very dependent on power. And then the last one I put in the last video had to do with the hydrogen economy. Who knows if that'll ever come about or not? Certainly, there's work being done in that sector, and it demands platinum if it's coming to fruition. And even if it doesn't come to fruition, there'll be a lot of experimentation around that hydrogen economy and using platinum. So it's a lot of bullish factors lining up. It's certainly been a laggard. And, I've heard one of the stalwarts in our industry, CEO of a very major royalty or streaming company. And I've heard this a lot from a lot of the stalwarts that, gold always leads and silver always lags, and it, catches up. It goes back and forth. But when I was trading futures for a living, I mean, my broker, my third one was extremely good. And the first thing he said to me, really, once we made a connection, was the whites lead the yellow. And in those days, it did. Platinum, palladium, and silver actually usually advanced before gold did. And if you look back to the last big move in the metals from 2009, the crisis, up to 2011, the last peak, silver peaked April 30th, May 1st, and gold didn't peak until September of that year. So, I mean, that's a pretty good example of silver leading gold. It peaked before gold. And anyway, I'm not trying to make a case out of it. I'm just saying that my stance has changed. The whites don't always lead the yellow, and the yellow doesn't always lead the whites. That's what's happening right now, and I can confirm that. But as things go further, we'll just see. There'll be a back and forth. Regardless, I think it's probably the most undervalued metal. Of course, I'm biased. I've been accumulating the platinum sector now for several months, and it really hasn't done anything. I did add to my silver position even at these lofty prices because I just didn't see anything out there that looked as good. We got that pretty big smash down around 27. I got in around that point. I'm up $2, which if your leverage is, it can be significant.
No, you mentioned how really the fundamentals don't change between, what party gets into the White House. We did have a question here. TJ wants to know, do you see a potential currency collapse and higher commodity prices no matter what party is elected? I think this is an interesting point. As we talked about, the fundamentals really don't change much, but when it comes to, a lot of people are maybe looking for Trump, for example, to save the day. But one of the risks I see is that, you know, someone like him, someone who seems like an outsider gets in and then, they collapse the system in some sense. Your perspective on where we could be heading, regardless of who gets elected, do you see the potential for a collapse shortly after?
I know shortly after, it's inevitable in my view. I mean, there's never been a fiat currency that hasn't collapsed, and that doesn't mean absolute zero, and it doesn't even mean non-acceptance. I mean, in Venezuela, you can get pictures on the internet of currency in the gutters because no one's bothering to pick it up. It's so worthless. That happened in Zimbabwe. Uh, I don't think the dollar will ever get to that level, but I do think that the currency crisis will demand an implementation of reset. And no one, to my knowledge, knows exactly how that looks. Do you readjust the interest rates on the bonds or the duration, how they're paid off? Do you say, look, we're reneging on our bond payments. You're going to get 70 cents on the dollar. We're going to close it out. Or the worst case is the currency crisis where the currency starts to move so rapidly to the depreciation level that people just shun it, and you pay off all these bondholders with almost worthless currency. Again, I don't think that will happen, but I don't think the powers that be really know. I think it's more likely that they'll renege on the payment of the bonds. If you're a foreign holder, we're not going to pay you. Look what they did to Russia. I mean, it's already been done in a way with Russia when they had those billions in the bank and the United States put sanctions on them and made their deposit null and void. They've done it to Russia. So could they do it to China? Yes. Could they do it to another foreign country? Yes. Could they do it to an institution or a bank? Yes. Once they do that, then it's game over, and you better have something in place that can replace it, and it better be trusted by the people. So it's a very scary time in a way. It's happened again and again in history. So like, oh my goodness, this is the first time ever. No, it's happened again and again. It's just the first time it's really happened on a global basis. Normally it's, Venezuela, it's Zimbabwe, it's Turkey, it's Argentina. It's a country, and not that those people don't suffer greatly. They do. But in this case, it would be probably a worldwide situation, which would obviously make it very difficult for international trade, foreign currency adjustments, and everything else.
No, I think those are really good points there. It is the first time that this has happened on a worldwide basis where no currency is backed by something real. And I think that just, regardless of what happens to fiat currencies in the future, having something of real value is an insurance policy against everything else that is paper. It's so important to have something outside of the system that can really weather the storm, regardless of whether we have a currency collapse or reset or whatever we have in the future.
Let me just interject quickly. I mean, perhaps this BRICS alliance could mitigate the problem somewhat. and all those currencies that are aligned with the BRICS agree to keep trading each other's currencies. That's a possibility. I won't rule that out. If it's a savior or not, I would say no. There's just too much based on the US dollar for that to mitigate the whole problem. I mean, it's sort of like, I can't think of a really good analogy, but running out of food supply, but you have, stockpiled and seen it coming. And so you got a month's supply worth of food. So you get a month further down the road. But for the international settlements market to have the dollar not be used because of a default one way or the other, I think it still take down even the BRICS. That's my opinion, but that's how I see it.
Now, Nate has another question for you here. I've heard China and India are buying all kinds of silver up. Why is this happening? I think this is a good point because, we mainly hear about them buying gold, the BRICS nations buying gold, but it seems like at least India is buying quite a bit of silver.
Well, it's both. It's industrial mainly. I'll get to the investment side in a second, but we put this in our page service, and you can find it on the internet. But India is creating the largest solar farm in the world. It's going to take up the same amount of space as Paris, France. So think about Paris, France, then expand your mind and think of that whole area is filled with solar panels. That's a lot of silver. And then China is the number one manufacturer of solar. So they need the silver to manufacture solar. Moving on the investment side, I mean, until India became wealthier on a per capita basis, most of the population bought silver to store their wealth because they've had centuries of currency abuse. So they know if they're going to put any savings away, not to do it in the currency, to do it in metal. So silver was really the metal of choice or default because gold was just too expensive for much of the population. That's changed over the last decade or more. So a lot of them go to gold, have it, but silver's still there in the background and still used for the same purpose. On China, they really were pretty much gold only as well for a long time. And recently, with their banking crisis, their real estate crisis, they're looking at both metals. And as most of our viewers know, there's been a big discrepancy between the Shanghai Gold Exchange price of silver and the COMEX or London price of silver. So the retail investment in silver in China has actually picked up rather measurable.
Now, before we let you go, David, I was wondering if we could maybe discuss the kind of the big picture here. It seems like what we're seeing is that we're seeing this kind of currency crisis maybe in slow motion as the Fed is looking maybe to lower rates, but we're still seeing, if you look at shadow stats numbers, high inflation. So it seems like things are really coming to a head here where the Fed has to ease and have more accommodative policy, but we're still having inflationary issues. So your perspective, maybe if we could end for our viewers, kind of the big picture, where does this all go?
Well, it goes what we've been talking about the whole interview. It's going to be more stress on the system, and the currency is going to be worth less and less over time. You might get bits and spurts where it looks better, looks stronger, or is superior to the yen or the yen ratio. Gold even comes back down. But overall, the trend's very clear. I think the analogy here is very good. I mean, if you're on a massive ship, it's very hard to turn it around. You're at the wheel and you're turning it to change things, and you're trying to change it. Momentum's keeping you going. Well, in this case, the wheel comes off and you hand it to your partner, and he can play with the wheel all he wants. The ship's going where it's going. I think that's where we're at now. You can play with that wheel all you want. It's not really going to make much of a difference. But the propaganda and the mainstream news and, what's said about gold as a pet rock and, silver people are wacky or weird or all that. You'll probably hear that kind of rhetoric. But the market itself will continue to move higher because it is a safe haven worldwide. Gold is recognized universally, silver as well, not as much as gold at this current time, but nonetheless it is. So that's it. I want to say two more things. I watched a Kitco interview with Matt Watson and Mike Dorenzo of the Silver Institute, And a couple of real important points. One, I know them both, and they've both been very, helpful to me over different periods of time. Matt said, current, things change, but at the current rate of consumption of silver, we've got about 4 years above ground supply, which is more aggressive than me. I've said 5 or maybe 6. And then we talked about the inevitability of the price going higher. And then Mike talked about several research papers that they're going to put out on the silver market going forward for different aspects of the silver market, not just solar, but this battery aspect that has been floating around silver investors. I made an update for our premium members, and I'll just say I call the Silver Institute because I'm pretty familiar with the Samsung story that actually surfaced several years ago, and there wasn't really proof of it. And talking to Mike, I don't want to say too much, and I hate being wrong, but I'm not afraid to take a risk. The story seems like it's been a little overblown. He did tell me, this is verbal, that the Silver Institute, will put out some sort of, I'll call it a press release. He didn't really name it, speaking to that topic. So I'm being a little conservative here, but nonetheless, even without that being as purported with 20% a kilo per car and all that's said in that writing, you don't need that. It'd be nice, and I'm not against seeing it, but I just think it's inaccurate. My point being is that with that going away 100%, still doesn't change the main trajectory like we've talked about on the money supply. There's too many forces moving in silver's favor from this point forward, unless something that arises I can't see at this point in time or whatever. So, 4 year supply, industrial demand completely increasing, and then the investing community coming back in the silver market, looking at it as a safe haven asset rather. Sorry. So I see good things ahead for silver. I'm getting pretty excited, and also pretty weathered in this precious metals arena. I've been there, done that many, many times, but nonetheless, it'd be nice to finish strong, and I think we will.
Sounds good. Well, we really appreciate your time, David. If our viewers are interested in learning more and continuing to track this with us, they can hit the subscribe button, the bell icon right there, and also like and share this video. If people are interested in tracking this with you, David, obviously we have you on the channel about once a month or so, but they can go to themorganreport.com if they want your more timely updates there. Can you share with us a bit about that?
Yeah, there's two services. There's a free and a paid. You can go to the subscribe button and learn about the paid service if you're so inclined. I'm going to do a free one-on-one consult, whether you remain a member or not. That ends the end of this month, so there's only a few more days. And then I want to direct everyone that's interested to the documentary, which is silversunrise.tv. That's one word, silversunrise.tv. You can send me a comment and let me know what female commentator in the financial space, doesn't necessarily have to be precious metals, that you'd like to see in a documentary. We're just about done with interviews. I'd like to have more female presence. I thought of Michelle McCurry from Kitco. She's very bright, knowledgeable, that great South African accent. I've reached out to her, but I haven't heard back from her. There's Lynette Zhang, there's Daniel Cambone, there's others in the space, but I'm kind of looking for that last interview to kind of fill out the interviews, and then we're going to start editing for the documentary. Hope to have it accomplished by the end of this year. So, Christmas time, maybe 2024, we can have the documentary Silver Sunrise, and getting over the fear and control of money, putting that power back in our own hands and take it away from those nasty makers.
Fantastic. We'll be looking forward to that documentary there. We'll definitely have you on as soon as it's out to talk about it. So thank you so much, David, for your time, and you have a great day, and God bless.
God bless you. Thank you.